What do you get when you put two storytellers on board the same ship inside the Sea of Thieves? You get the most action-packed, non-stop journey of a lifetime as we created the ultimate narrative to reaching pirate legend. Join me, Captain Daddy, to hear this most epic tale as we sailed with the famous Himbo of the Seas. This story really is like no other, as for once, I awoke aboard another ship rather than the tavern, and this vessel was known as the Jade Dragon. Today, I was with ExodusAblaze, who wanted to take me on an adventure with the Order of Souls, as I was nearing my status as pirate legend. However, neither of us expected what was about to take place. But first, we started this journey heading towards a nearby ghost fleet, as we got to know each other a little more. But without realizing, we were preparing ourselves for the rest of this voyage. For the first fleet, I was manning the cannons and hitting some crazy shots by the end of it. However, we were seeing the ghost ships being shot at by the island, which is something I had not noticed before. It turns out having two pirates on board also takes so much stress away from bilging or maneuvering, and quite soon, we sunk the captain's ship, leaving us with some nice loot before stopping off at a nearby island to defeat more captains and retrieve their skulls. As a duo that has never sailed together, we were already looking strong and feeling confident, so we took on two more fleets, swapping between helm and cannons, and towards the end of this, we were fighting like a well-oiled machine, and once the final ship was down, we collected all there was, reaching emissary level 5, before selling at New Golden Sands, raising my reputation with them a lot, but this was still not enough. Now it is from here that everything took a turn, and whether that is for the worst or best, you will have to find out. But you know that with this huge Fort of Fortune skull in the sky, that we could not pass on this opportunity. Before reaching there, however, a sloop began lurking near us, steering closer before sailing away again, and wanting no hiccups once we got to the fort, we chased them down until finally they attempted to anchor turn, which would prove to be their downfall, as I began firing cannons into their vessel, before Exodus fired me straight onto their deck. I jumped up, taking out the captain, and it wasn't long before we had sunk our first real pirates. This left us feeling very confident, as we now headed straight towards the Skull Cloud in hopes of retrieving treasure, whether that meant doing it ourselves or taking it from the hands of other pirates. As we neared the fort though, we noticed that a brigand team was awaiting us, but it would appear that these individuals were too focused on the troubles of the fort and not paying any attention to the seas. We sailed up slowly and began firing into them as I hopped across to them, getting on board and killing them one by one. With many shots and slashes, they were all beaten, and although they kept returning, with my hand-to-hand combat mixed with cannons fired across by Exodus, they had soon sunk, and now the bosses of the fort were ours to take on and retrieve the treasure. On board they had some more treasure, including 2 ashen skulls, so whilst I piled them on board, the other began firing at the 2 skeleton lords. Soon they were down, and now it was time for us to take turns in firing at the Ashen Lord, and he was quickly defeated, dropping our key to the fort. However, we did not have much time to celebrate. The brigand team was on its way back, and we had to move fast. However, Exodus had a genius idea, which would buy us a lot of time and prove to save us later on. We loaded everything most valuable on board as I sailed off to sell at the nearest outpost, while he stayed behind with a rowboat, loading the rest of the treasure as a distraction, hoping to take the brig's attention away. Although this didn't quite work for now as they began to sail directly towards me, the loot was all ready to pick up later, saving us valuable time. However, for now, I had one mission, and that was to sell. Luckily, I was sailing against the wind, and once reaching the outpost, I had just enough time to sell everything before getting back on board with Exodus, as the real battle had just begun. We began to fire, but they decided to ram us, whilst one of them jumped on, boarding us and hoping to take us out. However, we were too quick for them and swiftly took him out. We sailed past again, firing more cannonballs their way, and as I jumped across for a board, one was soon taken out by Exodus's cannon fire, making my job on deck easier, taking one of them out. I jumped back on the Jade Dragon as we blasted more holes into them. However, I could see a man bucketing and I was not going to allow them to save their vessel. With one final flintlock shot, the pirate went down with his ship, and we had once again sunk them. But receiving and selling our treasure would not be as easy as we'd hoped. Arriving back at the fort, we got everything on board, but before deciding where we could go to sell, we were now being hunted and chased by a Reaper galleon hot on our heels. As they were sailing into the wind, we now realised that we had to stand and fight yet another group of pirates trying to prevent us from finishing our journey. But all we had been through so far was leading up to this final stand, one galleon versus two storytellers on a sloop, and today I would make my legend heard. We kited them around an island before I was fired out in front of them, and as Exodus blew holes into their starboard side, I threw fire onto their decks, setting them all alight. Once I was back on our ship, I understood now why he was known as the Chaotic Crusader, as all of their masts were down, and I knew we had to capitalise on this. I jumped back into the waters, boarding the galleon before taking out the first one of their crew, very quickly followed by their second. And third. As their fourth returned, one shot in the face finished him off, and now we had control of their vessel. They were slowly filling with water and repeatedly returning. However, every time they did, it ended with them being sent back to the ferry, and by now, I was running through the flames of their sinking ship, making sure none survived until finally, it happened. And their ship had met the bottom of the ocean.
They sunk! Dude, and I just died! There's two of them back at least.
All that was left to do now was to sell the loot from the fort. However, upon doing so, I was told to speak with the mysterious stranger. And while speaking to him, I was congratulated, being reminded of my past adventures, starting without my beard as I was chased by a Meg, meeting my first two pirates who helped me on my way, saving the Sea of Thieves from Davy Jones with Captain Jack Sparrow, beating my first Kraken, buying my own vessel, the Red Beard, and my first steals from both the Fort of the Damned and the Legend of the Veil. All of these memories and so many more had led me to this moment, and I was now told to play a song in the tavern. As I played, the floor gave way and changed into stairs, leading down into a new area, which upon entering led me into a new lair for pirate legends. I had now surpassed my swabby status and was a truly respected pirate, with the most incredible journey to reach this new title. But I would not have been able to do this without the help of the most excellent captain known as the Chaotic Crusader, ExodusAblaze, and if you would like to see his tale of these events, go check out his channel and show him some love. But if you want to see more tales like this, however, you can see my whole journey from Swabby to Pirate Legend in the playlist on screen. Or if you prefer to see these live, check out my Twitch channel. And if you have some tales of your own to tell, be sure to join the Redbeards Discord. But I've been Captain Daddy, and until next time, arrgh!